All right, if you guys can just let me know that you can see my screen and hear my voice, maybe just drop a quick confirmation in. There we go. How's it going, Dale? All right, everyone. Today is Wednesday, January 16th. This is the weekly Jensen training webinar. We are going to be doing this every week, every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. If you guys ever have any questions, you need any help with the software and for some reason can't reach us, you can feel free to always hop into this Wednesday webinar. Feel free to drop in any questions you have. I am Nate Fisher, leading the webinar here. Most Wednesdays you will find me, probably almost every Wednesday. This is just going to be for general training on the software. If you guys missed last week's webinar, it was about 2.5 hours long. Kind of did a deep dive of every feature, or maybe a wide glance. This week and every week hereafter is going to be much more targeted, much more focused, hopefully much shorter. Would like to keep this around an hour and a half max. But again, if you guys have questions, there's things that we need to know, I will certainly stick around. Today we will be going through the call tracker. Let me start with some of our questions that we have here. Tony, it is, yes, 4 p.m. in the UK. It's actually 5 p.m. in Barcelona right now. So first question is from Dale. How do I find the call snippet to add to WordPress? And how does the Jensen underscore image HTML class work? Okay, so to get started, the first part of that question is how do you find the snippet? I'm going to look at one of the campaigns that I have here on my desktop. And essentially to add the snippet or to find the snippet, what you need is an external site. So let's just look at an example campaign. This is an empty campaign, or there's a website as well as a phone number attached. If I were looking at a campaign, what I would do is I would add connect a new site with this button here. And I would run through, let's just do testdomain.com. And let me add a number in here so I don't get a domain I've already tested. So this is just a quick example for Dale. I'm going to kind of blow through all of these settings here and just get to where I show you where the snippet's generated. So again, we're in the external site wizard where we're adding an external site to a campaign. And here we are. This is going to happen at the end of every successful external site that you add. Here is the JavaScript that you're going to want to put in your head tag. It's just going to be copy and pasted. And then to actually get the number to switch out, there's a little bit of instruction here. So if you just have a number in text, that is, it's a number, maybe it's in a paragraph tag, maybe it's a header tag. All you're going to do is add this Jensen hyphen or underscore phone class to any HTML text object. And if you have an actual link, so this is an anchor tag with an href, you're going to want to add this class as Jensen hyphen phone hyphen link, and that's going to add a little bit of extra code that's going to be able to replace this href. So hopefully that helps you out there, Dale. Looks like it did. Awesome. So let's jump into today's training. I'm logged into my demo account. Today we're just going to talk all about the call center and the call tracker. Really quick to get started, let's go ahead and hop over to the integrations tab. Now, when you're adding call tracking and call tracking capabilities to the Jensen platform, there's two levels or two types of integrations. So one integration is what I will call the active integration, and that's for having a call tracker connected through your Twilio account. Jensen will then hook up into your Twilio through the API. We'll be able to do everything that you do with the call tracker, record calls, get voicemails, things of that nature. That's all happening under Twilio, and that's an active integration. You can add as many Twilio accounts as you want. Every time you add one, you're just going to pull in to Twilio. You're going to pull in your account SID as well as your auth token. You can give a little nickname here. Click Connect Twilio. That's going to pull in all of your numbers. Don't be afraid if you're connecting a new Twilio account. It's not going to automatically configure things. So if you have a couple hundred, or even if you have a single number in a Twilio account and you connect it to Jensen, it's not going to automatically update the settings on that phone number. You're going to have an option to manually pull that number in and have it controlled by us. And then there are two other integrations that you may have noticed. One is with CallFire and one is with CallRail. Both of these integrations are passive. So what I mean by that is if you're already using CallRail or CallFire and you want to use the lead management functionality in Jensen, you can just add your API key for either of these, and then you can assign your call tracking number from here to a campaign, to a client, to a billing plan. Jensen's going to automatically pull your incoming calls for any of these phone numbers every few minutes, I believe. You'll be able to get notifications on those leads. You'll be able to treat them just like they're phone calls that were generated by the system. So that's all you need to know there. Let's actually hop into the call tracker itself. And let me double check that we don't have any pending questions. Looks like we're good. Okay, so the first thing you're going to see on the call center tab is kind of the main listing here. This is going to show you all of the phone numbers that you have in the system across all of your accounts, whether it's multiple Twilio accounts or CallRail or CallFire. You're going to see stats account-wide here. You're going to see a graph, obviously, with a daily count of how many calls came in, how many were answered, how many were first-time callers, and how many were missed. The most important thing on this page is probably going to be this buy phone numbers widget. This is how you buy phone numbers through the platform. So we are natively integrated with Australia, Canada, England, Northern Ireland, Scotland, USA, and Wales, otherwise known as Australia, Canada, the UK, and the United States. Just because these are the native integrations that we have here doesn't mean that you're limited to using phone numbers from these countries. It just means that using our widgets here and going through a city or an area code, these are the only ones we have natively integrated. If you are in a country that isn't supported by Jensen yet, all you have to do is go into your Twilio account. You can buy the phone numbers in there for any phone number that Twilio supports. And then you would come here, you would just click the sync button in your Jensen dashboard. That is going to pull in all of your numbers from your account, and it will also make sure not to set any of the configuration options. So you're just going to click the button, it's going to pull in your numbers, and then you're one at a time going to have an option to actually set the URL. And that is so that we don't change any of the settings the first time you add an account or the first time you sync in a number. You have to go out of your way to do that. So pretty self-explanatory. We do have a date range filter here. It just allows you to filter the date range for viewing incoming calls in your stats. Now, when you're looking at the main call table, you're going to have three options to click into any of your numbers. The far right option is this delete number option. Again, this is super important to remember, but when you click the delete phone number option, that is going to reach into your Twilio account and it is going to decommission the number. We've had a few circumstances where people didn't quite understand that clicking the delete button in Jensen actually is going to reach into Twilio and delete it there. If you accidentally decommission a number, I believe you have a 30-day window to pull the number back in without incurring any damages or risking losing that number. Otherwise, you do risk Twilio releasing the number and it being picked up by another Twilio user. The middle tab here, the middle button on all of your phone numbers are going to allow you to configure numbers. Again, that's going to be only for Twilio numbers because Jensen only has an active integration with Twilio. And then this third button here is just to view the calls. Let's go through the configuration panel. This is probably where you will spend the most of your time. The very first thing when we hop into here is kind of a new feature alert. If you guys saw our email yesterday, if not, there is a new feature. It's a way to quickly copy your phone settings across other numbers. So you can go into any phone number. Once you've clicked into its configuration panel, any Twilio number now has this copy icon here in the header. You can click it, and what you're going to be able to do is select other phone numbers. So I'll go and I'll select a couple of phone numbers here. And then if I were to just click copy settings right now, what's going to happen is it's going to go and it's going to take all of the configuration options of this phone number and it's going to apply them to these three numbers. You also have the ability to choose which options or which settings you want to copy over. So if I click that toggle button, which I just did, I can come through here and maybe I just want to clone or copy over the business hours, the leg length, the transcription emails, transcription numbers, whisper settings, call flow. For whatever reason, I don't want to do these. I can just uncheck attributes at will, click the copy setting buttons, and now just the settings that are checked in these boxes here are going to be copied from this number over to these three numbers. So again, that's brand new functionality. I believe it was just pushed out yesterday. It makes it pretty easy to copy your phone settings across numbers. I know we've had a ton of questions about doing this, and we've been helping out users in the background doing it programmatically, but now you have your own interface to copy phone settings across numbers. So I'm going to kind of just drone through all of these settings here. We will use this as a little bit of training for future customers when they get to the phone panel. So let's just roll through these one at a time. If you guys have any questions at all in relation to any of these, just feel free to drop them in. The very first thing you're going to set when you look at a phone number is going to be the active attribute. So you can have a number, and if for whatever reason you don't want it to be getting any sort of calls, you can click right there. And what happens now is anytime anybody calls this call tracking number, instead of being connected, they're just going to hear an error that says, or a message that says, hello, this number has been disconnected, and then the call will be dropped. We have the friendly name. This is going to automatically sync with your Twilio account. It's just a way for you to add a unique identifier to the phone number. Maybe you put whatever campaign it's being used on, whatever website, whatever landing page, you can put that in the name, and then throughout the entire system, you'll be able to quickly see what numbers are generating leads, what numbers clients are paying for calls through. It's just a way to kind of keep track of your numbers there. The time zone, pretty self-explanatory. Every phone number has the ability for you to set a time zone. You can choose to have the time zone, obviously, any time zone you want. And then what happens is if somebody calls the number outside of the business hours, that call is going to go straight to a voicemail. If it's in the business hours, it's going to kick off its normal call flow. So again, time zone, business hours, kind of connected here, actually completely connected. Let me just give a quick visual demo on how to set business hours. So we have this widget here. You can completely shut off days by just clicking the blue box. Now, if I were to do this, this phone number will only ever successfully call between the hours of 8 a.m. and midnight on Fridays. Obviously, that would be a weird schedule. So something like a Monday through Friday, 8 to midnight would look like this. We are on the 24-hour time picker here for our European friends. We can go through here. You can edit the opening time and the ending time. And then one little quirk is that when you're updating business hours, make sure that you actually click the update business hours button. And that's going to kind of independently set these business hours from the main form that gets updated here. I believe that's the only attribute that acts that way. So we've set business hours. The phone calls can only come in through this time. Now the next setting is going to be this leg length. The leg length is going to be how long we want a caller to be listening to a ring before Twilio determines that that call leg has gone too long, and then it drops into a voicemail. So if I click 10 seconds and I make a phone call and it takes longer than 10 seconds, Twilio does have a little bit of lag on the front and the end of their timers. It might take closer to 15 seconds in this scenario, but somebody calls, they let it ring for 15 seconds, then the number will automatically, or the call will automatically drop into the voicemail. This also applies for multi-leg call flows. So if I use a multi-ring or a round robin call flow, this is going to control every single one of those legs. So if I have a round robin with 2 callers, the first call leg can go 10 seconds. If that agent doesn't answer, it will drop the call and it will pick up the call for the next agent, let it ring 10 seconds, and then go to the voicemail or just loop back to the beginning, depending on your voicemail settings for the round robin call. Moving down, voicemail, pretty self-explanatory. When somebody calls, your call tracking number and the business hours are out of the current hour, or a call hasn't been picked up by an agent. This is what allows you to control the message that the caller hears. So you can just type in right here, thanks for calling. Please leave a message and we'll get back to you, whatever it is. That's going to be played by a robotic voice. You also have the option to just put in an MP3 URL. So we have a lot of customers that record themselves, or they have a client that's recorded themselves. They get an MP3 file. You put it right here. When somebody hits the voicemail, that MP3 file is going to play. Or the final option is this record audio option. What you're going to do here is just put in your phone number, click call me. The Jensen system is then going to dial you. It's going to say, hey, please leave your message after the tone. You'll have a brief moment to record your message, and then you're going to be able to set that as your voicemail. You can do that as many times as you want. So you can just, if you record once and you don't like it, you can record again. Just keep coming back, click and call me, and it's going to create new recordings. Moving on down the configuration here. So we have the voicemail transcription. Now this is done through Twilio. It's not technically handled by us. It is an extra charge for every single time it runs. So that's one thing to note. The fee is pretty tiny. You're going to want to Google Twilio transcription charges to see what they're charging at the moment in time, but it's usually a fraction of a penny for transcription. Again, you can either have that set to true, have that set to false. If you do have it set to true, you are going to need to have at least one transcription notification email or phone number. Again, if you have this set to true, you have somebody call your number, they leave a message, hi, this is Jerry, I'm interested in some window repair. You can have that automatically transcribed, and then you can have that message forwarded to your email or to your phone number so you can see exactly what your voicemails are about. We do test this a lot on our numbers. Sometimes the accuracy is good, sometimes the accuracy is not good at all. It kind of seems to be hit or miss, but the option is there if you guys want to use it. The next step here is going to be this direct to voicemail option. This is kind of similar to the active option in the sense that if it's set to true, the call will never make it through to an agent. It's going to immediately allow the caller to leave a voicemail and do nothing else. Kind of like if this is set to inactive, the caller will never get through, except for in this case, they're not even going to hit the voicemail. In this case, they'll go straight to the voicemail. So we covered transcription emails as well as numbers. The whisper, if you guys are familiar with doing lead generation at all, the whisper is a way to allow an agent or somebody that you're sending calls to, or even yourself, to get a little message before they're connected with a caller. So if we have a caller call this phone number here, maybe we're using it for a lawn care company. So a person calls this, boom, they're calling the tracking number. We push the tracking number call through to our company, and we have the agent at the company answer, and this is going to be what they hear before they're connected to the caller. So you can put anything here. Maybe this is an incoming lead from Nate, is something that I use a lot. You can put your company name. This is an incoming lead from John's marketing company, whatever it is. You can have that as speech that'll be said by a robotic voice by just typing in here. You can use an MP3 file if you've recorded the message yourself, or again, you can record yourself by putting in your phone number here, clicking call me, and doing that as many times as you want. So that is the whisper. Let's talk about the call flow. Now, the call flow is essentially what happens when this number is called, who gets called on the other side. So the most basic option is going to be this one-to-one ring through option. And that means that if somebody calls my call tracking number, it's going to dial this agent here, and that's it. So the challenge enabled, this is mostly used for the multi-ring and the round robin call flows, which I'll get to in a second. All that does is if it's set to true and somebody calls this number, when this agent picks up the phone, the system is going to say, you have an incoming call, please press any button to be connected. When the challenge enabled is set to true. When it's set to false, the agent answers the call. They're going to be immediately connected to the caller. Now, that is our most standard call flow. Let's look at both of our multi-number call flow options. So here's number one, the multi-ring option. That means that when somebody calls this call tracking number, the numbers that are here are going to be dialed immediately at the same time. Whoever picks up the call first will be the agent that wins the phone battle. So if I have 10 agent numbers here, somebody calls, one of them picks up the phone, all the other 9 agents are going to have their calls dropped, and the one winner is going to be connected. You can choose the hold music that people listen to. Both of our multi-ring call flows or multi-number call flows are using Twilio's conferencing technology. So a caller calls in, they're placed into a waiting room or a conference. They can listen to any of these sounds here. And when one of the agents answers, the conference is bridged. So the challenge enabled is the same functionality from this step here. The main reason that it exists is actually for multi-number call flows. If you have something like Google Voice or a electronic answering machine and you have 10 agents in a call flow, any of those electronic answering machines are going to register with Twilio that they're picking up the call immediately, and it's going to ruin the call flow for the other 9 agents. So to stop that, you can have this challenge enabled as true, and the system isn't going to determine that an agent has picked up the call until they've actually responded to the challenge. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I can explain it again. Essentially, the challenge is there just to stop electronic answering machines and things like Google Voice from ruining the fun for everybody else. This next option here, bind calls to agent, is pretty self-explanatory. If you have it set to true, you have 10 agent phone numbers here, or even 2 agent phone numbers. A caller calls in. When this is set to true, whatever agent answers that phone call is going to always be connected with that caller on subsequent dials. So if I were to call this phone number, I were to have bind calls to agent set as true, maybe Mark is the first agent to pick up. Anytime for the rest of history or the future that I call this call tracking number, I'm always going to be connected directly to Mark. So that is going to be true on both the multi-ring as well as the round robin call mode. The round robin call mode is going to be almost the same to the multi-ring, except for instead of having simultaneous dials going out to the agent, they're going to be dialed sequentially. I believe it's the order of the top number comes first, then the second number, third number, and so on. There is no limit to how many numbers you can have in a round robin flow. Maybe the limit is like 200 or something, but I don't think any of us are ever going to hit that limit. We have the same options again, challenge enabled. We have bind calls to agent. We have the hold music, and then we have this new option here, which is the VM rule. And essentially what that means is what happens when a round robin sequence has been finished. So if I had 5 numbers in here, what happens when all 5 of those agents are dialed? Now, when you have voicemail on and you have X number of agents, when all those agents have been dialed, it's going to drop to the voicemail of the system. So it'll kick the caller into this voicemail here. Otherwise, if you have indefinite ring, it will literally just keep cycling around and around and around. So if you have 5 numbers here, you have indefinite ring. If a caller stays on the line, it's going to forever and ever just continuously ring each of those agents one at a time. That is our call flows. And I would say probably the biggest meat of this page. This section is probably going to change in the next, I would say, 2 to 3 months as we add some more complex features to the ability to build call flows kind of dynamically. But as of right now, this is pretty much everything you need to know for directing phone calls from your call tracking numbers to your companies, your agents, people that you're working with. Moving down the list, we have our spam protection here. So if you've been doing any sort of lead generation or marketing online, you're probably aware of the enormous amount of spam that happens on a daily basis across North America and probably other parts of the world as well. The first option we have for paring that down a bit is going to be this RoboBlock option. When you click RoboBlock to true, it's essentially the reverse of the challenge enabled. So when the challenge is enabled, that makes an agent pick up a phone, press a button to be connected to a caller. The RoboBlock kind of reverses that idiom where when it's enabled, anytime a caller calls this call tracking number, before they're connected, it's going to say, hello, please press any button to be connected. And then once the caller has pressed a button, they'll be dropped into the call flow sequence. It definitely does help cut out some of the robo dialing. One thing to note is if you do have this enabled, you're probably going to lose legitimate calls over the lifetime of a campaign. It's not something that consumers are used to, calling a number and having to press a button to be connected. So the next thing we have, which is a more passive, a little bit less obtrusive spam filtering, are these integrations with Marchex, NomoRobo, and White Pages. These are all 3 add-ons that are in the Twilio marketplace. They all kind of transparently can be added to your Twilio account. You can click install right here, and what that's going to do is install the marketplace add-on on your Twilio account. It is an account-wide thing, so once you've clicked install, any number that you have in the system that is eligible for this or for any of these add-ons is going to immediately be applied. Twilio has it so if you install an add-on, it's automatically going to run for any eligible call. So all of these cover North America. If you have a +1 area code or a +1 country code, they're definitely going to work for you. If you have numbers in Europe or South America, Latin America, you're going to want to check the actual pages of these add-ons to see where they're supported. You will probably actually see, as you load this page, you'll see a little blue box that says, sorry, this number isn't supported here. Again, once you've had these toggled on, we recommend toggling all three of them. So you'd click install, 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 and then you would toggle this little switch right here. And that's going to enable all of your calls across your account to start getting a spam filter. I will show you, once we get through the rest of these, what the system looks like when it's spam filtering your calls. So moving through the spam filtering, we have the option to record. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can either record by clicking dual channel recording, or you can not record by clicking do not record. And we're going to have the option, depending on where you are in the world, it might not be an option. It might be obligatory, or else you're breaking the law. But you will probably need to alert the caller that they're being recorded. The default message is just, this call may be recorded for quality and training purposes, that a caller will hear when they're connected to a call tracking number that has recording enabled. If recording is not enabled, they're not going to hear any message at all. If you want to customize that message, you can come in here, you can type in whatever message you want, or you also have the option to just put in an MP3 file of a pre-recorded message, and that will also do the same thing. Moving down, caller ID. So when you want the caller ID to pass through to your agent as the actual caller who's calling your call tracking number, you can leave it on the default option. If you would like your agent to only see the call tracking number and not the actual number of the caller, you can come here and click this button. Now, client, if you have a client in the system, you're selling leads to them, you're selling phone calls, maybe you're not even selling to them, you have them in without any payment option, you just want them to be able to see their dashboard where they can see their leads, they can see their incoming calls. You do have the option of just assigning a client right here, and you're going to be allowed to have that client assigned to a billing plan if you have them in a campaign, and then you can choose how to bill that client with that connection. So again, a phone number can be assigned to a client can be assigned to a billing plan. A phone number can actually also be directly assigned to a billing plan, I believe. Any of those methods are going to allow you to charge clients for these calls. Moving down, we have the notification emails. It's pretty self-explanatory, although we are making some changes to this functionality right now because it's a little bit confusing. Let's say we have an email in here. Put an email in. What we're going to want to do anytime you put an input into this input with an enter, or anytime you put a value or phone number and email into any of these inputs with the enter tab, you're going to want to hit enter after you input it. If you've got a notification email in here, it's going to automatically be emailed for every new call. And then if you click true, it's going to email you once for a new call and once when there's an email once when there's a voicemail that's been left. And then kind of the same thing here. If you put a phone number in the notification center, the notification input, and if this phone number gets called, it's going to automatically generate a text. If you also have text on missed call true, it's going to generate a second text once a call has failed. And then if you also have text on voicemail, it's going to generate a third text. So it's possible that if you have things configured like this, you could get 2 emails and 3 texts per every phone call. We realize that that's probably not the best way to handle notifications. So hopefully sometime by mid next week, there'll be a little bit more sane notification system going where you can maybe just choose to get one summary notification after every phone call that'll let you know, hey, you just got a phone call, it was missed, there was a voicemail, or maybe it was answered, it was this many seconds in duration. We are going to be adding that in and kind of changing this around, and then this section will be a little bit less confusing than it is right now. And the final setting here is this show lead properties setting. And what this does is allow you to toggle whether or not you want to show the landing page or the website that this phone number may or may not be attached to. So if I do have this as true and I have this phone number attached to a website, you might get a notification that says, hey, your website.com has generated a call to phone number 12345, whatever it is. When you have this set as false, you're just going to get a notification that says, hey, your campaign generated a voicemail or a call. So if this phone number were in a campaign and this were set as false, it's not going to reveal the landing page or the URL. It's just going to reveal the campaign name. And that is the options for configuring a phone call or a tracking number. Let's quickly look at what else we have here. So one thing we have is the spam tab. If you do have your spam filter enabled, you will start to see calls that get blocked by one of the 3 spam add-ons. They'll show up right here. You'll be able to see whether it was Marchex, whether it was White Pages reputation score, or whether it was Nomo Robo that determined the incoming call was spam. You'll be able to see, obviously, that the spam is coming into this number. If you're on the higher level right here on the spam filter tab, you're actually going to see all of the spam filtered calls for every single number in all of your Twilio accounts that have the spam add-ons enabled. Let's hop back over here. All right, so one thing we do have is the ability to receive SMS messages. I guess this does count, or this is determined by your Twilio settings. So every Twilio phone number has capabilities. They can have SMS capabilities, they can have multimedia capabilities, and they can have voice capabilities. So if your phone number has SMS capabilities, we have the capability of forwarding on any text messages that you receive. So you can't respond through the system quite yet, but if you put in a phone number or any number of phone numbers here, as well as any number of emails in this input, click update number. Anytime you get a text to your call tracking number, those texts are going to be forwarded to the emails and the phone numbers that you have listed here. And then the last thing to look at is our incoming calls table. Let me see really quick if I can just find one of these numbers that has some incoming calls so we can look at that. Okay, so we have some incoming calls here. So some things to get started. Again, we have date filtering, so you can filter the data for the incoming calls for this number by date. You can also export all of your calls to CSV. Again, you can filter the date, click export to CSV. We're going to generate a CSV and spit it out and give it to you. You can see how many of your calls came in that were answered, how many were missed, how many were repeat callers, what time of the day, as well as what day of the week. So over here's time of day, over here's day of week. You can kind of get a feel for the activity level of your phone numbers. And then scrolling down, we have the actual calls table. So the first thing to note is that you can automatically apply labels or quickly apply labels to these calls. We usually have spam as a label, we have telemarketer, we have qualified lead, and once you go through and kind of tag your calls on a daily basis, you'll have a good idea of what calls are coming in to what phone numbers as real leads and what calls are coming in as telemarketers and worthless leads. You can see at a glance whether or not the call was answered, whether or not the call has a voicemail, where the caller's from, if there's a recording, as well as who the call is from. Sometimes you will see some data like this. This is the phone number lookup functionality that Twilio offers, which gives us a little bit of insight into whether it's a consumer or a business calling. Although in this example, we only really got one out of these 8 calls to show data. A lot of times when you just see sparse data like this, it usually means that this is a spam phone number that's calling, and Twilio just can't get much information about it for whatever reason. So let's click into one of these. And anytime you click into a call, you're going to see a little bit of a technical view. You will see the events as Twilio reports them. You're going to see a quick snapshot of the stats from the other page. And then almost most importantly, you're just going to have a button where you can quickly block this caller so that they can't call again. So if I were to click this button, what it's going to do is take that number that called and put it into our global block list. It's important to note that this global block list does have a format where we're not automatically parsing into this format. So you're going to want to make sure that you put the plus country code and then the full number with no hyphens or spaces. Let's hop back really quick one more time. Again, if you have a round robin call flow or a multi-ring call flow, this table is going to look a bit different because the call events come in a lot differently. You can now see that this caller has already been blocked. If we hadn't blocked him, it would still be a red button here. Let's go ahead and we can just remove that from the list. And while we're here, let's talk about our spam block list. So this is a much more proactive way to block spam than the spam add-ons are. In this scenario, you're just going to come in here, you're going to type in all of the numbers that you want blocked. One thing to note is that we do have about 110,000 or so numbers blocked by default. We are parsing and pulling an FTC robo dialer list that kind of gives us 110,000 immediate bad numbers that aren't allowed to call any of the phone numbers in the system. And then from there, you can kind of build your own list, blocking everything from Yelp numbers to Home Advisor to sometimes even Google. Just depends on what you're interested in blocking. So that is, I believe, the grand tour of the call tracker. I'm going to give us a few minutes to get some questions in here. Today, I think that's all we're going to cover in terms of the training that I'm going to provide. We're going to do an entire day, possibly even next week, on using the lead dialer, getting the lead dialer configured, making sure that the snippet and is interacting with forms correctly, making sure that the lead dialers and forms that don't go through the snippet, so sites that are built on Jensen, are working properly. I'd like to spend a lot of time on the lead dialer. So we are at about 50 minutes in today. Would like to try to keep these to a manageable amount of time. So we've got a question here from Dale. It's a good question, Dale. Why do you need to use all 3 spam add-ons? Don't they all do the same thing? So they all do the same thing from a very high-level way of looking at it, where they all take a look at a phone number and determine whether or not that phone number belongs to a spammer. But they do not all have the same results. So what I've been seeing thus far is it looks like Nomo Robo has the most identifications of a spammer. So what we'll see is a call will come into a number, and the way that Twilio is integrated with these add-ons is that immediately their code is running. And the first time that Twilio notifies Jensen about an incoming call, there's an extra amount of data from these spam add-ons. And each of these add-ons gets to answer or gets to give a suggestion whether or not they think the incoming call is spam. So you might have, and you will have, a lot of situations where 2 of the spam blockers didn't determine a call that was spam, and 1 of them did. So having all 3 of them enabled, 1, it doesn't really cost that much money at all, especially if your volume is relatively low. And 2, it's it's allowing you to cover more spam than if you were to just have one of them enabled. So that is kind of the reasoning behind having all of them enabled versus just one. It looks like Mr. Buckley and Matt, now that I have you here, if you want to hop on, I know we've been trying to connect on Skype for a while, but if you want to hop on after this, just ping me on Skype when we get off. But Matt is asking about grouping numbers. So say you have multiple locations and you could pick them and look at them at once. So the way that we do this, Matt, is essentially the campaign functionality. So the way that you would group phone numbers is by creating a campaign. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to create a campaign and let's call it phone number grouping. If I could spell, I really can't spell today. All right, phone number grouping campaign. We'll just kind of blow through. It's going to want a billing plan. Let's just do a test billing plan. I'm going to put in test data here. And let's just create this. So I'm just creating a dummy campaign. Okay, so we've got an empty campaign, Matt. What I'm going to do, I'll look at the overview. Here's a little bit of an unfortunate situation that should be resolved shortly. So I'm looking at a campaign. Let's say I have 5 numbers that are connected to one client or one niche or whatever it is. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I would literally just add in those numbers that I have, click add, and then what should happen, which isn't happening right now at this moment in time, is now that you've added those numbers, you should see them listed here. Because there's a slight bug where if a site doesn't exist and it's not going to list the phone numbers, but essentially once we've listed those phone numbers, we can see all of the calls coming in the leads tab now for this campaign. So hopefully that makes sense on grouping. Is that what you were thinking about, or was there another idea you had in terms of grouping the numbers together, Matt? Okay, just let me know if you're thinking of grouping the numbers in a different way. So I believe that today we are going to hit a little bit less than an hour. Are there any last minute questions? Again, the lead dialer is going to be its own section. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, if you have any questions that you think of after this, or maybe you're watching a replay, you can always come in, give us a message here directly through the site, or you can get a hold of us, support@jensen.ai. Thank you everyone for showing up today. I know it's halfway through your week. We do appreciate that. I have been recording this. We will get the recording up. If you are watching and you're interested in last week or any week's recording of the webinar, you can go to the forum. Anybody with an account has access to the forum. You just click right here once you're logged in, click on this forum button right here, and there is a weekly forum or a weekly webinar forum where we upload the recordings to every week. That is it for today. Thanks for showing up, and I will get this recorded, and I hope you guys all have a great rest of your week. See you next Wednesday, and we will be going through the lead dialer then.